The 29th degree in a natal chart. I wanted to talk about this from a personal perspective and what it means. I have 3 planets on the 29th degree, which is Venus in Libra, Jupiter in Libra, and Mars in Scorpio. Keywords for the 29th degree are intensity, crisis, exaggeration, the need to balance contradiction, feeling worn out, exhaustion. It can entail a struggle between 3D and 5D. It is about mastery or neglect, sensing things before their time, clairvoyance, intuition, being thrown from one end into the other, transition stages, switching perspectives and feelings. It entails a sense of urgency. It often comes with a specific mission. It is very spiritual in nature. Having a planet on 29th degree can often feel like you have to learn your lessons in a very fast pace, which then leads to exhaustion. Or you may feel more inclined to neglect that specific issue within your life. It can feel like you're doing things over and over again, like there is a sense of repetition to the 29th degree. There is also a strong sense of purpose attached to it, such as, for example, Venus on the 29th degree. You may enter a relationship and you feel beforehand what the purpose is of that relationship. And at the same time, you may feel like this is not going to last forever, but I know why it's happening. Whatever planet sits on this particular degree will be flavored oftentimes with a sense of crisis. One can go from one end into the other end, like it's often about experiencing the extremes. That's also the deeper lying reason behind the 29th degree, is that you experience a wide range of different type of experiences that are very contradictory or extreme in nature to one another. But this happens so that you can understand both sides of the scale. Another way to explain the 29th degree is crisis-induced knowledge or crisis-induced mastery. There is a possibility of feeling more inclined to give up towards the issues that that planet entails. Or there is a possibility that you exaggerate the meaning of that planet or the sign it's placed in. For example, I have seen in a native's chart who had Venus on 29th degree in Taurus, who had an emphasis onto finances and possessions. That person had an addiction to buying things that he thought had value, but in the end did not add any stability or perspective or harmony onto his life.
Oh my god, they're working in my street. Sorry for the noise, you guys.
Anyway, sharing my experiences with the 29th degree, starting off with Venus in Libra as the 7th house ruler in the 7th house. That's a tough one. For example, in my first relationship, I felt when my virginity was going to be taken. That may sound a little strange, but on the day when that happened, I had a strong sense, today is the day. Another time when I had this sense beforehand was the day when a relationship ended. I had this one-liner in my head of today is the last day of my relationship. I remember that I told it to my best friend back then. He was trying to comfort me and say things such as, that's not true. But by the end of the day, my relationship ended. And the weird thing is that I did not have any reason to think or feel that before that happened. I've had it happen twice when I entered a new relationship that I felt this is not my one, this is not my person, this is not going to last forever. But I felt that it came with a strong purpose. In the first case, that person became the father to my child. In the second case, that person was somewhat a guide or a support within a very difficult period of my life where I was transitioning from one chapter into the next. Another time when I had these intuitive feelings was when I met my current spouse. I was very cautious and careful to meet. However, I did feel a strong sense of there is something more about this person. There is a shared mission or something. I don't know how to explain, but in the end, it all made sense. Everything fell into place. When it comes to my experiences with Mars, it has been more so about extremes, really extremes, because my Mars is at 29th degree in Scorpio, conjunct Pluto, conjunct North Node. So it's massively exaggerated, if you will, and it's in the 8th house, which is a malefic house or a house that's feared by many people. And if I may be so honest, yes, I have had very negative and traumatic and damaging experiences when it comes to the department of sex or Mars. but I've also had very transcending, tantric, and spiritual experiences with Mars type of activities, if you will. I had a strong sense about a particular person to be able to touch me in certain ways and make me feel something that I hadn't felt before. I just had this intuitive feeling with that person, I'm going to experience this or that or blah blah. And in the end, when I came together with that person and I had this intimate merging, my intuitive visions were validated. Another way how Mars on 29th degree is expressed in my life is physical exhaustion. I don't know what it feels like to wake up well rested, or I don't do any physical activity. My daily life consists of sitting on my ass in one specific spot, and I don't even use a chair or a couch. I sit on the ground. It's getting a little cold. Another experience that I've had with Mars on 29th degree in Scorpio in the 8th house that fits perfectly with its position is that I was randomly hit by a car and broke my tailbone twice. Mars is the ruler of my first house. When it comes to Jupiter, I find it a little bit more difficult to come up with examples of things that I've experienced. However, one way to look at it is that Jupiter is the planet of intuition. For example, if you want to look at the natal chart seeking for intuition, you gotta look at Jupiter. If Jupiter is unafflicted, the intuition is clean. My Jupiter is actually not afflicted unless you consider Venus, the conjunction to Venus, to be a weakening factor. But then to me that makes more sense, is that just my intuition is really highlighted. Other ways how I can see Jupiter play out in my life is that Jupiter is the ruler of my 9th house conjunct to Venus, and it is a truth that a foreign person has been a massive impact on my relationships. Massive impact, if you will. Another way is that I exaggerate with my studies. I have been studying astrology for several years, and when I study, I cannot just study for an hour. I study for 10 hours straight or longer. I think the longest amount of time that I've studied in one go was 17 hours. I'm not sure, but it must have been something like that. Yeah. Sometimes Jupiter does express itself in the ways of an overload of information in my head that I struggle with to structure, for example. Although my website is all about structured information, but again, my website was initially created for myself to structure everything. I wanted to add something to the department of Venus in my chart. So the 29th degree is crisis, and I met my current spouse in a crisis-induced chapter of my life when I became homeless. Another way of how Venus on 29th degree expresses itself as exaggeration is that I am in a 22-year age gap relationship, but that may be explained by my Venus trying to Saturn, meaning a love for mature people or the need for a mature spouse that can either be spiritually, emotionally, mentally, but also physically. And I think this is everything that I wanted to share about the 29th degree. So I hope that this was insightful and educational to you.
Thank you. Come again. Goodbye.